Yo, 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 yo. Yo, 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 yo,
Ezekiel 25:17. The path of the righteous man is beset on all sides by the iniquities of the selfish and the activity of evil men. Blessed is he who in the name of charity and goodwill shepherds the weak through the valley of darkness. For he is truly his brother's keeper and the finder of lost children. And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to poison and destroy my brothers. And you will know my name is the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon thee.
Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother, Asar Imhotep, once again with a conversation with brother Asar Imhotep, coming to you live from the hot state of Texas, taking a break from the cold in Philly. It may have warmed up a little bit in Philly since I've been gone, but pleased to have you all who are joining us live here, both on Facebook and on YouTube, for this very important conversation. As always, I like to give a shout out to everyone who is listening live. And so from Sean on Facebook to Lizette and James to, I'm going to have to scroll up a little bit here, to Brian Hess, Infinite Minds, Ivan, Brother Chavez, BK Trainer, Sister Mika, Everything is Everything, Melanated Goddess, Lamar Pope, Alkebulon Mine, Jahima Spitfire, and Raw Sun. Peace to all of y'all who are listening live in the chat and who are not in the chat and just want to be here for the conversation. And thank you for the comment at El Kebulon Mine. Many may not know that I am a photographer, so some of those photos that you saw at the beginning while the music was playing is photos that I have taken, even of myself. And the music that you heard playing is some of my early production work. So peace to brother Ifa Tunde Fayemi, Angela Santos Blanche, and Per Unk, and Shesmu Patah. So peace and blessings to all of you who are listening live and in the chat. And so normally I would have the screen full so I can test the backgrounds, but I have my little green background. And right now, since we're talking about God, I'm going to have a cosmic background. So I'm in my Neil deGrasse Tyson mode. So I don't know if y'all can kind of see this kind of cosmic layout, saying in the back. And so that's the spirit in which, we're going to come today. So peace to Sean, Palidore. I don't even know. I've never heard you actually say the name. So forgive me for saying it all kinds of wrong. And June Money, in the chat. So peace to Garfield Reed on the Facebook, joining the conversation. So without further ado, I'm going to get into the subject. So this is a full lecture. So this will probably be around 2 hours. Hopefully I can reduce it. And thank you, Everything is Everything, for your contribution to the channel. And today's topic is the African origin of the word God. And this is something that I have been researching for mad years. It's almost just as long as my research on the word Kemet. So, I've gone through many incarnations of this investigation. And I think I'm at a point now where I can make a more definitive argument. And so those may be familiar with my work, Alluja Volume 1. I proposed something there, and it's actually what is in Volume 1 is actually some earlier arguments that was on my blog page when I had my website, Mocha Urban Hang Suite, or mochasuite.com. So since then, I'm kind of advanced the argument. So this will be my latest incarnation, and it will be along. He said it's that French Creole thing to my last name. So yeah, you got to pronounce it for me. So Polidore, Polidore. I don't know. How you do the D. in the last name, Brother Sean. So I will begin to share my screen and get started on this mug. So I'll try, if y'all have any statements or comments in the chat while the conversation is going, I will, try to address it if I can live. So I have my phone here with YouTube, and then I have my other computer here with Facebook. So I'll try to pay attention, but of course, if I'm looking directly at my screen, I may not catch everything. So let me just go here and share the screen. Boom. And so I will wait until I can confirm. What do you say? It's politely adore, polydore. Well, in French, they don't pronounce the last consonant. So it could be palidor. I got to hear him say it, Anyway, I'm going to leave Brother Sean alone on his last name for the rest of the night. But, okay, let me, I see it on both screens, so we should be good to go. So, as I stated, the African origin of the name God is the subject of this conversation. And so if you have any questions, please write them down. And so towards the end, I'll be able to answer your questions. And so you may find that I may answer your question, throughout the duration of the conversation. So kind of hold off on your major questions. But if you do hear any static or there's some technical difficulties, please say something. So I'll be looking back and forth on at the chat for information along those lines. So, as always, this is an aspect of what we call alluja, and that means to make, provide, or to retrace one's steps, to refer to a place of origin, and to restore. And so the objective of this is kind of to restore some aspect of history and to kind of dispel some myths that I have been introduced to over the years concerning this topic. And so, as always, one of my recent books that had just been published in January is Alluja Volume 2. And so you can go to my website right now and purchase you a copy. And I've reduced the cost of this book to the pre-sale cost. So you can get it now for $30. It's normally $45. So for a limited time, you can get it for $30 if you have not gotten it already. But the book that I just released this past month is Towards a Comparative Dictionary of Cikam, or Egyptian and Modern African Languages. So the topic that we are discussing today is actually in this book. So there's a little bit of what I'm, of course, it's a lot more too. I don't want to go over the entire article, but you'll get the gist of what the article is. And so there's, of course, more details. So peace to Brother Alan Flagg all the way out in Cali. So Cali is representing right now. Thank you for joining the conversation. So yeah, so this topic right now, you can get my full analysis in this text here. So I'm gonna give you the gist of it. You'll know my conclusion. And so, for those intricate details, you'll have to, get the text. So So here's the problem statement. The question is, where did the name God come from? And to give y'all a little history, you know, coming into consciousness, I would say in the mid 90s, when I was a young teenager, you know, you come into a lot of ideologies when you come into quote unquote consciousness, where everybody's trying to pull you in different directions because there are a lot of people fighting for bodies to join their ideology. And so when I was coming, of course, in leaning more towards the African centered perspective in terms of my way of analyzing the history and culture of African people and things, I would always come into these conversations where people would disown the word God itself. And we'll get into why that is the case. And so for many, when they hear the word God, especially in the African world community, those who are conscious and not Christian or Muslim, they imagine it from the European perspective, and what you see on the screen is a representation of what they imagine God to be, not necessarily for them personally, but this is the vision that they have associated with the English word God. And so this is something of the white man, of course. Now, if you were like me, in the early and mid 90s, you may have had this perspective. If you were a Hebrew Israelite, of what God may be. And so, Yahweh, and of course, Yahweh Shai, and that is, of Jesus the Christ and things of this nature. So they imagine, of course, because in the Hebrew Israelite tradition, just like in the Nation of Islam, God is a man. And so since God is a man, God has a phenotype and God is black. So this is the perspective that that you would find, especially in the early 90s, well, even now. So this is kind of recent artwork, but this is what you would see with Malachi York and the Hebrew Israelites, the old ICUPK, and things of this nature. So this is what they imagine when they think of God. And of course, if you saw one of the more recent movies, this is, God. It is Morgan Freeman who played the character, in the movie. But I put him here because he has an interesting, well, I shouldn't say it's his documentary, it's National Geographic's documentary, but the lead host and, interviewer for this documentary is Morgan Freeman. And so the documentary is called The Story of God. So if you have an opportunity, I don't know where this is being shown. It may be, I think if you have Netflix, they may have this. I don't have Netflix any longer, but I still have my, what do you call it? Prime, and I don't see it on Prime. So maybe on National Geographic they have it, but it's an interesting documentary when you see everyone's different perspectives of what God is and how they view and interact and live their lives according to the definitions of God in their particular different cultures and in languages or whatnot. But this isn't a conversation on the nature of God and if God actually exists, but the word God itself in English. And so, as I stated earlier, when I was coming into consciousness, as we would call it, I would always run into these hostile conversations when it came to the usage of the word God. So some of the people who hated the word God, if you use it in a sentence or whatnot, is especially RBG. Anybody who's RBG hate the word God. And I would never understand why everyone was against the word God. So you'll find Pan-Africanists, African spiritualists, new conscious woke folks, old conscious woke folks. Everybody hates the word God once they find a little knowledge of self. And I understand, why? Because we want to distance ourselves as much as possible from European people. And so we want to not use terms that they use to reference the same phenomena. But I am a scientist first. And so my obligation is to the truth of things, regardless of the politics behind everything. And so this is what the nature of this conversation is about today. So some of the historical issues with the term God, as far as my personal experience is concerned, is that the word God is seen as a Germanic word. So because it's Germanic, that means it's automatically associated with white people. So that's the white man's word. And so you're hearing these conversations that Africans don't have gods. They have, quote unquote, principles. And so I can turn on my timeline anytime in the present time, and I will still see those conversations going on in my social media feeds. And then there's the European concept of God doesn't match the African divine principles concept of God. And which always gets me, because people will disown the word God, but then use the word divine. The word divine is another Indo-European word for God. And matter of fact, it is the root of the word to in Tuesday. So, if we was to go by in terms of having a spiritual observance, Tuesday is literally God's day. And so when you say divine, it comes from that same root. So it always boggles me when someone wants to throw away the word God, but then substitute it with the word divine. And as if this is not the same people's words. Matter of fact, the word exists even in Germanic, but we will continue. So it has caused me all kinds of issues in times past. So, I used to be a member of bb2me.com, but because I would argue with the host on the meaning of the term God, I got kicked off of bb2me.com. So this is maybe almost 10 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. So, me and Dr. Obadeli Cambone fell off on the term God. So, it's that serious in the community, where if you disagree with someone's perspective on the word God, then they will try to disown you and things of that nature. So this is what happened, for those who don't know this history, is over the term God. And so, of course, even in my own camp, now, Brother Unc hasn't kicked me out of the Armor Raw squad, but we get into our debates on the nature of the word God. So everyone knows that Brother Unc is an atheist. And so it hasn't been, this is when we first, got to know each other, that we would have these debates on the word God itself and its etymology and things of that nature. But I've been researching for a very, very long time this subject. And so I've made many friends and many enemies. And hold on, let me see. Yes, I've made many friends and many enemies over this word God, over the years. And it's been a hot minute, but I started questioning the validity of the etymology of the word God, and why, for example, on the bbtumi.com website, it was such a big argument, is because I started doing some independent study, and I was finding these various texts that connected the African languages with the Indo-European languages. And so one of the earliest texts that I purchased, and actually I think this one that you're seeing here on the screen currently right now, this is the 2007 version. There was another one that came out in 2004. So I was already familiar with his earlier work, earlier version, and before he actually made a book form print copy of it. So it was just an article, and the book is very thin. It's really just an article made into a book. But this is, from G.J.K. Campbell Dunn, who's a linguist and classicist out of New Zealand. And in this text here, Comparative Linguistics, Indo-European and Niger-Congo, he argues that Indo-European derives from Niger-Congo. Now, that is a very tall order and a very controversial topic. But through his analysis, he was seeing connections that could not be explained away by chance. And when you look at a lot of his work, that's the focus of his work, the African origins of classical. Matter of fact, he has a book titled that, The African Origins of Classical Civilization, where he's primarily using linguistics and archaeology to make the argument that the first people, in the Mediterranean, all of this was African people, and that these Indo-European and things of that nature was either influenced or directly born out of African languages. And what he argues more specifically is Niger-Congo. So, of course, with him using Niger-Congo, he is within the camp of the Greenberg hypothesis in terms of Afroasiatic, Niger-Congo, things of that nature. So he does a lot of mass comparisons, and I think he's a fan of Nostradric and all of this other kind of stuff. So he was one of my early linguistic teachers from back in the day. So then you come across texts like this one on the left by, I want to say he's a reverend, Melo Nzeyito Hosias, is an African brother, and he wrote a text in French called The Bantu Roots of Latin, which is a very interesting text. And I think that he is not the best text in my opinion. However, it has enough there that anyone who is trained can go back and clean it up. But he puts enough there that other sources and evidence support his initial theory. And so you have the book on the right, The Bantu and Romance Connection. So Romance being the Romance languages like Latin, things of this nature. But this is simply a typological comparison between the Bantu languages and the Romance languages. And more so, as a subtitle says, a comparative investigation of verbal agreement, dependent pronouns, and information structure. So this is a very deep linguistic book, but it's just comparing, these typological structures between these two different families across the waters. But a lot of this stuff kind of supports what's going on, even though they're not making the argument. The editors here and the authors in here are not making the argument that Bantu and Romance are genetically related. But when you juxtapose the information here and then the other information from these other scholars, you can start to put the pieces together here. And so then you have individuals who've, I speak about, a lot on this channel, and that is Brother Jean-Claude Mboli, who wrote his text, The Origin of African Languages, also written in French, in 2010. And in this text, he makes the argument, of course, of the validity of the Negro Egyptian language family as proposed by Dr. Theophilo Benga in 1993. But also the third section of his text is dedicated to a comparison between the African languages in Semitic and the African languages and Indo-European. And so he came to the conclusion that both Semitic and Indo-European develop out of a creolization process from which these African speakers, these Negro Egyptian speakers, migrated out of Africa, as you can see on his book cover here, into the Levant and into Europe, and what we're now calling, Eurasia, Europe. And it is from this basis and a creolization process that, gave birth to Semitic and Proto-Indo-European. So, this is an independent scholar who is also noticing these African words and these African phrases and African morphological features in Indo-European languages. And so, this is, my revamping of his Negro Egyptian, where I called the larger family Chiankanda, and then Chian and Into as being a branch here, and then evolving, and this this synthesis and of these different languages, which ultimately becomes Proto-Semitic based off a separate branch. But we've had a conversation about this. The details of this is in Aluja Volume 2. So check that out when you have the opportunity. And so, based on this map, I redid his map a little bit and included the Sumerian language that comes out of Africa here. And we had a conversation about this today on Brother Garfield's show. And, hopefully in the near future, and I think I've already had a conversation about this on my channel as an independent conversation, just like we're having now. But, when you understand that these Negro Egyptian or Chiena Intu speakers, populated, Africa, and some of them in more recent history left Africa into what is the Levant, which is here, some staying and intermingling with the natives here and creating the Proto-Semitic languages. And then you have over here the Sumerian as an independent branch, and then ultimately genetically them merging with some of the folks that are around here. And then there's others who continue to migrate up here in Anatolia and the Caucasus, which influence the development of the Proto-Indo-European and Indo-European language family. And actually, Proto-Indo-European is really kind of a language phylum and not necessarily a family. But hold on one second. As I take a sip of liquidy goodness to continue this conversation. So that is the nature of, why I'm looking into Africa as a possible origin of the term God itself. And we'll see why I had to look elsewhere than simply Indo-European. because they're not sure of what the etymology is. And this is something that I had to, this is one of the things that I kept arguing with Dr. Cambone on. Like he was regurgitating things that he himself had not studied. And so as we will see in these few citations, that they have no clue, they have no idea where the etymology of the word God is. So we're going to do a brief literature review, and I have more examples in the book, but for the sake of time, I'm only going to deal with a few here. So the three proposed, well, I should let you know that there's three different etymologies that are proposed for the word God in the Germanic languages. And that is, God comes from a root meaning to invoke, thus God being the invoked one. Or two, God meaning coming from a root meaning to pour, and thus one whom libations is poured for. Or the third hypothesis is God coming from a root meaning to sacrifice, thus one whom sacrifices are made to. So for all of you students of history, when anyone provides you three separate possibilities for the etymology of a word, this is a clear indication that they have no idea what it is. So when anybody tries to argue with you and they just do a quick Google search for the etymology of the word God, and one of these three pops up and tries to argue with you that this is the case, this is not the case, because they don't know. And matter of fact, they're going to say that specifically. So here is the word God in a number of Germanic languages. So what you're looking at here is just a table that I put together, from various different sources for the word God in these various different languages. So on the left-hand column are the Germanic languages, and then the subsequent columns is the Webster Dictionary, the Catholic Encyclopedia, the Oxford Dictionary, and the American Heritage Dictionary. So you can see God, Gott, Guth, Goth, Gott, Good, Guth, Gu, Guth, in all of these different languages here. And so when they say Old Teutonic, this is basically Proto-Germanic. So they're reconstructing Gudum in the Oxford Dictionary, Gudum or Gutum. And then in the American Heritage, they reconstructed it as Gudiga or Gudam, or the proposed Proto-Indo-European root, Glu, in the Oxford Dictionary. And then in American Heritage, Hu or Gu or Guto. So as you can see, there's various different proposals. And for anyone who is, familiar with linguistics and reconstructions, you can see that they're not consistent in terms of how they reconstruct the word. And I don't even know why they reconstruct the word, because as we're going to see, this word is clearly a borrowing into these Germanic languages. This is not native to Germanic. And so just to give you an idea, the Catholic Encyclopedia, gives, in their section on God, in terms of Anglo-Saxon God, you have the German Gott, which is akin to Persian Khoda or Hindu Huda. The root meaning of the name from Gothic Gru, Sanskrit pub or imu, meaning to invoke or to sacrifice to. So these are two separate meanings. So they don't know. They're saying this either means to invoke or to sacrifice. And saying it's probably either the invoked one or the one sacrificed to. So you have one source here that's giving you two possible etymologies. So they're not sure of the etymology in the Catholic Encyclopedia. Then you have this resource here, which is the Oxford Linguistics Introduction to the Proto-Indo-European and the Proto-Indo-European World by Professors J.P. Mallory and D.Q. Adams. And so Mallory and Adams, this came out in 2006 on page 354. They tell you in terms of this word God here, the connection of invoke seems to lie behind some of the cognates derived from guhu. For example, Old Irish, guth, voice. Old, I think this is Central Slavic, zovo, call. Avatar, zavaiti, calls. Sanskrit, havate, calls. Tokharan, kuwa, call. It supplies the Germanic word for God as what is invoked, gutum, and probably also in Tokharan B, nakte, God, from a reconstruction, ni guto, therefore the one invoked downward. And as we have seen, it may carry the meaning invoke also in Indic. So you have to pay attention to the words that are being used here. So I have highlighted in the red, like in this first sentence, the connotation of invoke seems to lie behind some of the cognates derived from gu. They don't know. And as I say here, probably also in Toharan. So they can't make up their mind right here. They don't know, which is why they're using language like seems to. Let's go back to the other one here. It could be or either or here. Invoke from a root meaning to call or to sacrifice. Those are two different roots. So this seems to lie here. And so this is one of the points that I always bring up is that these folks aren't sure. So how are you sure that these are what the words mean and you haven't done any independent linguistic analysis on the word God in these languages? So here's another table with and this is in the text as well, these reconstructions for the word God. And so I source Wikipedia here, and they have one version of it to pour and to libate. So remember, I told you there's three different theories or hypotheses, I should say, more so hypotheses for the etymology of the word God. So here's one, to pour, to libate. And then you have from the same Wikipedia article, to call or to invoke. And then, of course, we heard from Mallory and Adams, voice, which correlates to the invoked, what is invoked. And then range, which is another text on Indo-European. They just have God, and then this other variant here for priest in Germanic or Gothic. And then, Mallory and Adams again for inkate or nigutos, the one invoked down. So you have invoked, sacrifice, and the pour libations too. So three totally separate ideas that, none of these scholars can agree on. And so if that wasn't good enough, then you have these other, representations or hypotheses for the word God. So this is from Wade Cox, that's cited in this article, The Origin of the English Word God. And so the full citation is in the text. And so what they're arguing is that the word God actually comes from Hebrew. And so this is the argument that they make in the article. Objections to the use of the word God. So you have those who are of the Christian faith who refuse to use the word God as well, because they believe it is of pagan origin. So listen to this. So objections to the use of the word God stem from the understanding that the Babylonian deity of the fortune was Baal God, pronounced God. It is then assumed that the term is pagan if the word God is used. The term God in the ancient Anglo-Saxon comes from the word good or gut, as in the Dutch and German. The word is actually a Hebrew word from which God itself, in the sense of SHD, I forgot what this it's a source though, is derived. The word is good, pronounced good. The tribes of Israel, when taken into captivity, took with them this name. It was used also by the Assyrians who captured them. It is a prime root meaning to crowd upon or attack. And this means to invade or to overcome. It is in this sense of overcoming, as God is the center of power, that the term is used. Good or good is not the same as God or Baal God, worshipped by the Babylonians. One is a preservation of the concepts of the other. So you can see here that, they're going beyond Indo-European and saying that it's borrowed from the Hebrews, but more so specifically the Babylonians. It's borrowed from the Hebrew text, but it's the Babylonian god Baal God, the god of fortune. And so when you read, Isaiah 65, 11 and 12, you get this, folk etymology definition. And so it says, but you who forsake the Lord, who forget and ignore my holy Mount Zion, who prepare a table for God, the Babylonian god of fortune, and who furnish mixed drinks for many, the god of destiny. I will destine you, you, says the Lord, for the sword, and you shall bow down to the slaughter, because when I called you, you did not answer. When I spoke, you did not listen or obey. But you did what was evil in my eyes, and you chose that end which I did not delight in. So this argument is that the word God actually comes from the biblical text, and more specifically the Babylonians. So if that is the case, according to this guy's definition, that it comes from a root meaning to crowd upon or attack. So now you have 4 different hypotheses. So to pour libation, to sacrifice, and to call or invoke, and then to crowd upon or attack. So 4 different etymologies here. So we're not getting any kind of confidence in terms of them even understanding what this word means. And so the earliest written form of the word God among the Germanic languages is actually a Bible verse. And, so they translated it into Gothic. And so the Goths had this word here, Gothis. This is what you see here. This is a representation from the text. It's called the Codex Argenteus of Matthews 5 and 34. That's what you see this word here that's kind of highlighted in this square. So this is the representation, right here in the, IPA representation, but this symbol in the middle is like a TH sound. So it's Guths, which is when you see this S at the bottom, it's supposed to be representative of the pagan gods versus just Guth, which is, or Goth, which is the word for God, the Almighty in the text. So that's explained in the dictionary text. So we have this text here, which is a little bit more, telling of this term. So this came out in 2013. So there's a linguist by the name of Gus Krunen who wrote an etymological dictionary of Proto-Germanic. And so on page 171, he's going into these different words that allege, ultimately mean the word God. So you have this goyon, to throw, to spawn, perhaps related to the Proto-Indo-European root hu, to pour, for which see grutan. So let's go to grutan, which is on the same page in 171. Grutan means to pour. So Gothic, guotan. In Old Norse, gyota, to drop, throw, cast, young. And then you get all these other representations: to pour, to mix, to melt, to pour, to sacrifice. So gu, and then tokarin, A and B, ku, to pour off, a libation, and then Greek hu, to pour, to shed, to smelt. This the verb is clearly derived from Proto-Indo-European root gu, to pour. But the root final T is without counterpart in the other Indo-European languages. Latin fundo, ere to pour, is often deduced to reconstruct the root extension good with nasal infix in Latin, but it's not entirely certain that the root final Proto-Germanic T in Latin D are homologous. If Proto-Germanic gutan continues pre-Germanic gutan, it must be a back formation to the iterative gutan. But what he's saying right here is that the final T, they're not even sure where the final T comes from in the word gut. And so people add that based on Latin, but there's no evidence whatsoever that those two are related. So that's what he's saying right here. So, but then he continues. Now we get on to the word that became God. So it's Gouda. So notice this word Gouda that he has a reconstruction for is totally different from Gutan. Two different words here. And so this is going to be very important. So we have Gothic Guth, as I mentioned earlier. Old Norse Guth. I forgot what that is. Guth, Old English God, English God, Old Frisian God, Old I forgot what that is. This is Dutch, Old High German Gott, etc., etc. So he reconstruct Guto or Guto. He's saying, is this Indo-European? It says a question mark. But then right after that, he gives some commentary. He says, no accepted etymology. The traditional comparison to Sanskrit, Hotar, and Zotar, sacrifice and priest, is technically possible. And then he goes into some technical stuff here, but I'll leave this here. So those in the future that want to finish reading it, or, you know, of course you can get the book. All of this is important. What's important here is that there's no accepted etymology. So that's why when you go to these other sources, they're not sure of what the word God means. And the reason why I say they're not sure is because it's not a Germanic word. It's borrowed. And so one of the reasons how we can tell this is the case is looking at these words. So I don't think I'll deal with sacrifice here. But for example, let's look at these words in the language for to pour. So remember, they're arguing that the word God comes from a word meaning to pour, and in a sense to pour libations. But when you look up in these Germanic languages, the word for pour, you have this word gifben in German, in Dutch, giften, in Irish, doort, and in Greek, huno. None of these resemble the word God in these languages. So we go to Dutch here at the top. Guten is not God. You go to German. Gifben is not German Gott. These words did not evolve in the same way. These are totally separate words. So I don't even know why they even had the gall to make an argument that these forms derive from these that are still in the same language. And so when we look at the words for to invoke in these same Germanic languages, like let's take Irish, for example, agart, invoke, Afrikaans, roip, Frisian, arop, Norwegian, pabarop, Icelandic, borit, Swedish, abropa, Gaelic, afgrad, Dutch, berop don up, etc., etc. But we go here to Dutch, God. We go here to German, Gott. Frisian, God. But Frisian, anrop, for and to invoke. So these are not inherited terms. So we deal with the German in terms of the word invoke. The word invoke in German is aufrufen. But the word for God in German is Gott. And the word for to call, rufen, nennen, anrufen, aufrufen, bezeichnen, telefonieren. invoke, afrufen, beshkokri. None of these are God or Gott or Guth, etc., etc. So it is clear as day that the reason why all these, look at these forms in Dutch, in Scot. Well, Scots Gaelic is actually has an indigenous word for God, dia, that we where you see the word divine, come from, and all this other kind of stuff. But all these others, Swedish good, German Gott, Afrikaans God, Danish good, Frisian God, etc., etc. All of these are borrowings into these languages. These are not indigenous to Germanic. So I don't even know why this is, even put in the same category. So the new paradigm. So now we're going to get into, my proposal. But before I do that, I have to introduce you to the system Proto-Indo-European. And so in 2013, this professor here, Ioana Pisalo, completed his PhD dissertation and earned his doctorate. It took him 8 years to do all of the necessary work to complete this PhD dissertation. And this is a unique dissertation for the reason that what he was doing at the same time was building kind of an AI, an artificial intelligence database for generating a comparative dictionary, based strictly on the sound laws and the science of historical comparative linguistics. And this is a major feat in linguistics because we've been looking for something like this along these lines, for the longest, to be dealing with these particular different languages. But on the right-hand side here is the primary, is System Proto-Indo-European, the primary phoneme inventory and sound law system for Proto-Indo-European. This is the title of his dissertation. And you can find it online and download it from the System Proto-Indo-European website. And then, of course, this is a different article. It's called Proto-Indo-European Linguistics, Indo-European Linguistics in the 21st Century, from trilaryngealism to monolaryngealism, returning to Oswald Cismerini, Ioana Pisalo, and Jan Hunen. And he's out of, is he out of Sweden? He may be out of Russia, I think. But a very powerful linguist. And yes, this is him with this hat. And I have no idea why but if you look at his pictures, he always has a hat like this. So I can't tell you nothing about this damn hat and why the hell he wears this hat. But he reviewed some aspects of the Alluja Volume 2, which was dealing with his Proto-Indo-European and my comparisons. And he has a Facebook webpage as well. And so in the text Towards a Comparative Dictionary 2020 by our brother Asar Imhotep, in the chapter on this word God here, I make this statement. I said something prior to this, and then continuing in that part of the conversation, I say this will be important. Oh, I was talking about the laryngeal theory, which we'll get into in a little bit. I say this will be important to note because the proposed etymology for the word God in a System Proto-Indo-European lexicon, which is the website that I was talking about, is Proto-Indo-European Kahut or Gahut, which you see here in the red, with a meaning of Lord, God, honor, glory, and subsequent meanings masterful, glorious, and honorable. And I have to stop here. There's a reason why I deal with this person's website, because it's one of the few that deals with the comparative method. and it actually uses mathematics and science to come to their conclusions in terms of what are the roots for Proto-Indo-European, and he gives you the sound laws and all of that, which I explain, in the text. And so this variation here, Chahut and Gahut, has reflexes in Greek: kudos, glory, honor, reputation, fame; Hittite, gut, anit, threat, treat masterfully, lordly, bossy; Gothic, guth, god; Gaguth, respectable, honorable; and then Old Icelandic, guth, pagan god; Old High German god. And I think these are all borrowings, by the way, et cetera, et cetera. As we suggest in this essay, the you see this here, this in aspect of Gahut, and Gahut is an infix to the root kud or gut, which has not been reconstructed for Proto-Indo-European. We hope to find this root in the African languages we examine in this essay. So this all makes sense in a second. So just bear with me. And so what is, and I don't have time to really go into the depths of what the laryngeal theory is, but it is a hypothesis, and I'm reading this straight from Wiki. The laryngeal theory is a widely accepted hypothesis in historical linguistics of Indo-European languages, positing that Proto-Indo-European language had a series of phonemes beyond those reconstructed with the comparative method. These phonemes, according to the most accepted variant of the theory, were laryngeal consonants of an indeterminate place of articulation towards the back of the mouth. So when you see these laryngeals, what Dr. Pasalu argues is that there's only one laryngeal that can logically be reconstructed for Proto-Indo-European, and that's the forms that you see here. It's a voiced form and a voiceless form, and I should actually have the voiceless. So this is an error I have right here of the voice in this one here. But the laryngeals has to deal with what they call the coloring of certain vowels, especially E and O. We don't have time to go through that, but I want to just highlight here is that in terms of the laryngeal theory, in regards to Proto-Indo-European languages, they're positing, that's why it's a hypothesis, that there was a series of phonemes beyond those reconstructed with the comparative method. So they're trying to answer some anomalies in Indo-European and Proto-Indo-European, but they don't have enough evidence to reconstruct for it. So the laryngeal theory is outside what they can scientifically prove with the comparative method. And so you don't take the inclusion of these as something that is proven invalid. It's a hypothesis based on some stuff that's a whole lecture in of itself. So we won't have that discussion at the moment, but I just wanted to introduce it to you, and you can pause this when you come back to listen to it, when you feel ready. So, but here is the reconstruction or at least for English. And so what's good about this website is that, you have the proposal for the Proto-Indo-European root for the different languages, and then it gives you the stages of the sound changes that is proposed based on the scientific method and principles. And so I don't have time to really kind of go into that. This is some linguistic stuff here, but the argument is that the proto form for English was this word right here, gahu daho, meaning God and deity. And then it went through a series of evolutions here. So we have A became 0. That means there was a loss of A. So you see in the next line here, the G and the laryngeal, the voice, fricative here is or the voice glottal here is closer now to the G sound. And so it's lost in both parts here. So you see the A is gone. And so what he's saying now is that the laryngeal disappeared, the voice laryngeal disappeared from the D sound. And then again with the G close to the G sound. So you see it lost there. So this is how we get gudo, and then change from O to A, and then guda. And then the final loss of the A. It became good, and then we pronounced it God. So U became O later on. And so they're giving you the sound changes on the website. So it's a very good website. So I use the website as the basis for my comparison. So hopefully y'all sticking with me, here. So now we're going to get into, the details. So what I decided to do in the text is compare the Proto-Indo-European forms as well as Hittite and some others, but we're only going to deal with Proto-Indo-European here because we don't have enough space on the screen to kind of compare everything. So the Proto-Indo-European reconstructions based on the system Proto-Indo-European lexicon, and it's a group. It's not just Dr. Pasalo. It's a group of linguists who and scientists and programmers who have put this site together. And so I'm comparing it with the collagen language out of Kenya. And so what was lacking in the other proposals is that no one ever compared the word God to individual languages and built the sound correspondences. So they did not do the comparative method when they came across in trying to etymologize the word for God. So that's what we're going to do here. So what you will see here is a complete comparison of Proto-Indo-European and the collagen language. But before I do that, I have to kind of school y'all on something here. So in historical comparative linguistics, we have the comparative method, which is the linguistic way of doing the scientific method. And it is a way to eliminate chance and coincidence from our analysis. So to give you an idea of what this means, for example, let's take, for example, the English word mess, which means a dirty or untidy state of things or of a place. Now, and I know I'm going to pronounce this all kinds of wrong. The Kakchikel Mayan language here in this side of the hemisphere, in the Americas, they have a word mess, which means mess, disorder, or garbage. Now, these look similar. They both start with M. Their second consonant, the first vowel is E, and the second consonant is S. To an untrained person, they will look at these two words and say that these are cognates, meaning that they both descend from the same genetic parent. But, which would mean that the Kakchikel Mayan language and the English language, which is a Germanic language, are related. But that's not the case. And we know this how? The first test that we do is called a first initial consonant test. If the word mess and mess in English and Kakchikel were cognates, we would expect to see a series of words in English that start with M to correspond with a set that starts with M in Kakchikel. And again, I'm murdering this name because I haven't heard it spoken. So I'm just saying Cikam, the Mayan language. But when we look into English, we notice that there is no pattern. So the English word man, and then we get to Cikam, Atsi for man. There's no correlation here. The word mouse in Cikam is choi. Again, there's no leading M in both of these words. The word for moon, and then mother, nan. No pattern whatsoever that you see here. So this fails the first initial consonant test. So the English word mess and the Cikam word mess, even though they sound similar and they have similar meanings, this is done by coincidence. This is just a coincidence. Or one could possibly argue that the Mayan language borrowed this from English. But either way it goes, they're not cognate. And so further, they failed the first test. But notice, like if I'm comparing ancient Egyptian, for example, to the Chiluba Bantu language, and we do the first and second consonant test. In this word here in Egyptian, there's a word kemet that means dorsal fin. In Chiluba, we have musalala, fin, flipper. The K in Egyptian matches the first consonant position, matches the S in the first consonant position in Chiluba. The M in the second consonant position matches the L in the second consonant position in Chiluba. So if these two are cognates, we should see the same pattern over and over again when we compare. So let's continue. We have in Egyptian the word kim, meaning service or duty or work. In Chiluba, we have sala, to do or to work. Same consonant sequence, K, S, M, L. Then we have this word here, kim, to pay. Then we have sela, to pay the dowry for a wife. K, S, M, L. We have this word kemet. And I include this here because of the determinative or the classifier, which is of a river or a canal. Then we have this word here, musulu, river, brook, stream, creek. Again, the consonants match. There's a pattern here. We have the word kim, complete, to put an end to. And then you have sula, to be finished, completed. Then you have kusala, at the end of, the point of, the limit of, the boundary of, at the border, edge, margin, bank, beach, or shore, coast, with ku being a locative prefix. Same consonant sequence. And then you have Cikam, which is to bring to an end, to finish out, to spend. So this is a verbal prefix, which is a causative. That same causative exists as a suffix in Chiluba. So it's sudisha. So the L turns into a D when the L is followed by I. So that's what this formula means right here. Go through until the end, finish. So we can say that there's a relationship here between Chiluba and Cikam, which is Egyptian. So you couldn't make the same argument between Egyptian and Chiluba that you would have to make between English and Cikam, because there's no pattern here and there's a strong pattern here. So chance is eliminated as far as these comparisons are concerned, but this is clearly chance when we're talking about English and Cikam. So I just wanted to put that on your mind and for you to keep this in your mind as we're doing the comparisons. So now we can go into the comparison of Proto-Indo-European and collagen. So now it's about to get good. And I'm about to piss all the RBGs. I'm going to piss all the Pan-Africanists, all the old woke folks, and all the new conscious woke folks when it comes to this word God. So let me take another sip of my, and I saw somebody say that or ask, was it wine? No, I don't drink alcohol. So this is V8 juice, but it's not the tomato-based juice. This is the drink juice, the fruit juice. So so let me get started right here. So this picture here is modern collagen people in Kenya. And they're an interesting bunch of individuals who are worthy of study. And I had on my channel, I interviewed Dr. Kipkoech Sambu, who has written his PhD dissertation, as well as 2 books on the Egyptian origin of the collagen. And so they're very important people to study and understand. And but I will continue, right now. So we're doing the initial consonant test here. So these reconstructions are coming from the System Proto-Indo-European Lexicon website that I mentioned earlier, that was created by these European linguists and mathematicians and software developers. And so that's what these roots are. So keep in mind the English and the Kakachal Mayan language and what we discussed earlier. If the Proto-Indo-European and collagen languages were not related, we would not see any pattern whatsoever. It would look just like, just to go back up, our comparisons will look just like these forms here. There would be no pattern detectable. And so, but if we look at the patterns like we see here with Egyptian and Shiluba, then we have to ask some different types of questions here. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So this is just the first here, and I'm dealing with, the first initial comparisons here. So we have Proto-Indo-European on the left-hand column. And so this kind of a check is the root. So this is actually the mathematical square root sign. So it's not a check mark, so to speak, but a square root. So, and I have highlighted in red the correspondences. So, but however, the next 3 columns, so the first one's Proto-Indo-European, that's what pi means. The next 3 columns is collagen, it's dedicated to the collagen language. But I have 3 different columns for the same language because there's different dialect forms that you find in the language. And so you'll see that some of these forms for the same word is either going to begin with the K sound, or it's going to begin with the S sound, or it's going to begin with T or Ch. That's what this is. And so the Ch, this is the IPA representation of it, or the International Phonetic Alphabet sign, but I spell it out in our normal English in the actual tables here. So this Ch in Chichun is this symbol here, the Ch, and T, of course, is T. So we have this root here, Q or EQ or OQ, horse, bird, or fast. And so there's no K form and there's no S form for this word. It's only the T form. So ta'er, to fly, tarit, bird, tarit yet, bird, or te'erta, fly. We have cube, to kiss, fondle, or throw kisses is a verb. You have in collagen, kuul, suck or siphon. And then this is palatalized, to chun, suck on or kiss. So they're the same word, just different dialectical variations of the same word. So this was palatalized. So this is a front vowel, u. And because of the front vowel, so front vowel being u, or e, or e, which is the I. If the K sound is followed by one of those vowels, it will often trigger a palatalization process. So that's what you see here. Chun, suck on, kiss, same word. So we can see here that, at least for this row, that we can match Proto-Indo-European K to collagen K and T and Ch. And so we continue. We have another short form in Proto-Indo-European, kui, to pay, to repay, atone, punish, revenge. And what I'm doing right now is I'm setting up my argument, because what I have to do is I have to eliminate chance. So before we get to the word God itself, I have to demonstrate and prove that the forms found in collagen actually matches what is in the Proto-Indo-European. So we're eliminating chance in this process. So K here in kui, to pay, to repay, is k'ir, take revenge, avenge, to pay back. And so really is K, K, and this I here is really a reduction of R. And so we can get into that a little later. So we have this word here, kui, inscribe, mark, or to write. We have collagen, car, to cut. And then this was palatalized to sir, write, writers, authors. So these are the same word. And so even in Indo-European, the word for to write and inscribe derives from a root meaning to cut. And so this is just a different variation of this root here, car, because there's another form of this, in the reconstructions that mirror what you find in the collagen. And so, matter of fact, for those who have Aluja Volume 2, read the chapter on the African origins of the word science in my book, and you'll see these representations. So we have again here, kui, afraid, fear, honor, worship. We have kas, glorify, encourage, give joy to praise. And then we have the palatalized version, seal, praise, glorify. Sal, praise someone by giving praise names, etc., etc. We have another palatalized form, cha, praise, chai, glorify, compliment, commendation, praise. And then we have this version here, kill, encourage, persevere, hold on, endure, make stronger. And so this is along the same lines. And so this is why it's here separate. But these are the forms here. So we have sa, pray, worship, adore. Say, pray, worship. Sayit, pray, worship, adoration. All the same thing here. And so we have this form here, rachi, to be killed, die, dead, fight, weapon, hedgehog. And then we have ku, strangle by blocking, mouth and nose. And then we have churyut, struggle for, battle, fight, scramble. All of these, again, this is a palatalized variation of this word here. They changed the vowel to give it a different sense, and it triggered palatalization. And so we're seeing a pattern here where you see K in Proto-Indo-European, you're seeing K in collagen, or S, or ch, or t. You'll see that this is regular. So we'll continue. This is different. Now we're going to strictly deal with two consonant sequence. So you have the first initial consonant test, then you have the second or two consonants in sequence test. So you have Proto-Indo-European, cur, enemy, wrath, collagen, core, to be wild, cur, bind, hard, repair, to mend, cool, hole, hollow, path, cavity, hollow, digging as in the verb form. Then you have kut, burrow, Coot coot, dig a hole. Then you have the S form, soar, poke through, pierce through, make a hole. Then you have the tor form, spear, prick, poke, or stab. And then you have this form here, carrying, hole, hollow, with these suffixes here, ket, hole, gorge. You see the pattern here. And so I should let you know that the L sound can come from T. It can come from the L and the R sound can come from T, can come from S, can come from D, and can come from Z. And so this is just a little bit of something that y'all should know in terms of sound change. And so we go further. Cool or kuo, lean, lie, rest, hesitate. Kalel, nightmare. Cool, sleep with. And then chit, to lie down. This is a different form of this word. Cool, to turn, rotate, or to move. Kus, to turn. Cur, to stir. S becomes R. Cool, and then R becomes L. Cool, stir with finger. Cool, put finger in something and turn. Currin, move about restlessly. And then you have the T form. So y'all seeing, it's a pattern. You cannot say that this is chance. So if the collagen language and Proto-Indo-European were not related, were not relatable, you would never see a pattern like this. And so this is why, and I saw Garfield come into the show earlier. I don't know if he's still listening, but just in case you come back in the archives, if you're not listening, we can do the same thing for Sumerian. And so this is how we know that African people are the ones who migrated and became the Sumerians. And the same thing with the Indo-Europeans. It's just part of the natural evolutionary process. And so we continue. So we have other two consonant forms. Kiss, coss, kess. Scrape, dig, strip, scrape, comb. Coot, to comb hair. Kiss, kios, kies. To be, live, stay, place, area. Ku is, be. Because to live and to be means to exist. It's a copula. And so there's a loss of the second syllable here. And ka, place, home. Still consistent here. Initial K. And so there's no representation in other forms over here. And so, and I have more in the text, more in the book. And so, anyone trying to make an argument, they're going to have to put up as many forms as I do to make an argument for chance, which they can't do. And so, so now we're using the forms with the laryngeal forms entered into the text. So we have ka, and so remember, this is a hypothesis trying to explain the nature of vowel change that cannot be explained by ablat. And again, that's a linguistic thing. Maybe I'll do a separate video on sound change, ablat, and Indo-European, so y'all understand the importance of the laryngeal theory and why this is in here. But the African languages, there's no need to hypothesize this. So hair, band, lichen, bind, gird, quar, tie, bind. So K in collagen, and then R in collagen, in Proto-Indo-European. So notice that he reconstructs two forms of the word. Kahur, the voiceless form, and gahur, the voiced form. So this is a voiced laryngeal, and then the G sound is voiced. But regardless, the first and second consonant, even though it's third, but this is a hypothetical consonant here, is the R sound, and that's what we see here. Gahir, water, waters. Career, stream, with with clean water. Ka'al, ga'al, call, scream, attract, etc. Ka'er, call, or tweak, voice, sound. Ka'al, bald, bare, naked, hairless. Ch'er, daybreak, become clear, cloudless, bald, skin. Bicharat, naked, nude, uncovered. And so it's consistent. Remember that what I'm showing here is that the Proto-Indo-European forms will match one or more initial consonant forms, depending on the vowel and the dialect. So that's why we have these 3 rows here for collagen, with this 1 row here for Proto-Indo-European. And so Kal, rock stone, and then Koi, rock stone. So remember, I told you that the L or R, can turn into I or Y. So this Y corresponds with the L here. And then Kar, Gar, crab, grab, take hold, and then quit, grab, snatch, run. And then we have the S form, sar, dash to snatch, run and grab, cr, take away, remove, open away. So different variations than this here occur. Pluck leaves off vegetables, strip off leaves. So you can see there's this, by the different vowels, there's a different semantic nuance to the forms. And because of the different vowels, which we call, ablat, and to change the nuance, it forces the consonants to change. So most consonant changes in languages is a result of the changing of vowels or the presence and or loss of affixes to the root. But that's a linguistic conversation, and I don't want to throw everyone off. So we continue. Ka'ahin, ga'ahin, kun, give, it means to birth, relationship by marriage. Then we have kun, give birth, bring forth, give something towards. Then tilya, kin, tilyit, lineage, genealogy, family roots. Again, the palatalization of vowel, this front vowel I turns this K into T or ch. Same thing with S. Kahin, gahin, burn, glow, shine, etc. Quinyi, light at, illuminate, shine, light at, light up, small. Consistency here. It's continuously passing the test. And so I did about 50 words in 50 or more words in the actual test. So we're not going to go through all 50, but when you go through all 50 plus, you will see that it's consistent. It's the same sound correspondences. So when you have here gihan or gihan and all these different variations, to recognize, to perceive, care, see, look at, view, carry, see with, look through, copy, imitate, seek, realize, get to know deeper about something, have lessons, etc. Gahun, gahun, stuff, swell, bristle, abundance, voluptuous, abundant, sere, blessed, prosperous, plenty, to fill up one thing. And so you see the R corresponds to the N in these representations, here. Same thing with the L and N here. But in this form, it has N and Ny here. And then we have this other palatalized form, Kyang, many, much, abundant, substantial, plenty. And so we're dealing with multiple stages of evolution in collagen, and then the consistent reconstructions here in Proto-Indo-European. So I'm hoping that, y'all are seeing this here. So we can see, I want to exhaust this stuff. So in collagen, again, we have this root here, gahud. So what I wanted to do is show the first and second consonant. So remember that there's a gahud and a gahud form for God proposed by the system Proto-Indo-European. And so we have the two forms. So we have KR, KL in terms of the consonants, KS, KR, GR, in Proto-Indo-European, and KL and GL. So we have KN and GN as far as the first and second consonant in Proto-Indo-European. In this one, and now we're doing the D. So Gahod in GD or KT in GD. So here we have to eat and food, Gahud, Gahid. And then we have Kalya in collagen. Same sequence that we saw before. So G and K, and then now it's D and L, or G and T, because it's the palatalized version of the K here in collagen, and then D and R. So remember what I said. You can get L and R from D, S, Z, and T. So this is not surprising at all in terms of these correspondences. God, find or to give. Kun, to give. Seech, get, acquire, obtain, find. And so, you know, the Mboli motto explains why you get sich here, because the words are kikwe and kweki, from which all these words derive. But that's beyond the conversation right here. So I'm just going to keep it going. And so I have to go through all of this to show that, you know, we're being systematic and we're being thorough, because the same thing we can do here, I can do with Sumer and Bantu and collagen and even Egyptian. So Khat, lower, clay, earth, land. And we have core, farm, land, place, or country, place, resident area, area of land where people live. Also Kora. And then we have Kahut and Gahut, Lord, God, honor, glory, masterful, lordly, glorious, honorable. Then we have Kanyit, respect, Kantit, respect, honor, integrity, Kunyit, integrity, Kib Kanyita, honorable. And then we have teach, respect, Tachis, respect, moral decency, Tikista, decency, morality, respect, Tichis, respect. And then we have Charin, glorify, praise. And then we have here Net-to-or, the exalted, the almighty one. And this is in reference to the supreme and divine in collagen. And then we have this other form here, Quilak or Quill, muscular, powerful, well-built, strong. And we'll get into the details of this. And so the one I argue is the correspondence for Kahut is this word Net-to-or, the exalted, the almighty one. And we'll get into that later. But we have this form here, kit, high, get high, raise. And then we have koi, long, high, and then to'or, raise, praise, promote in rank and status, to'or, tall, elevated, steep, talel, to rise. So, and so this is the basis for the comparisons. So now, notice this word here, Net-to-or, the exalted, the almighty. We're going to see that this is cognate with the word nature in in the ancient Egyptian language. So now I'm showing the word nature in comparison to Chiluba. So we have this word here, nature, God. We have Inkole, Inkwele, God, in Chiluba. And so the ch sound, which is a palatalized form, corresponds to the K sound in the Chiluba. And the R in nature corresponds to the L in Chiluba. And so the N that I have highlighted in blue corresponds to the N in Chiluba. So what is nature, God, in Cikam or Egyptian is Inkole or Inkwele in Chiluba. Or did I say, yeah, nature in God in Egyptian is Inkole or Inkwele in Chiluba. And so there the sound correspondence is there. And so you have this other form by Inkole, spirits, ghost, or Mukulu, God, in Egyptian, in Chiluba. So, and this word here, Inkole, it is also a form Ingole, which means a powerful man. a prominent or powerful man. So we have this form here, neterit, fixed, set, solid, firm. Kale, strong, well, vigorous. So it doesn't have the in prefix, but again, what's in red is the roots. And so you have ikala, be, stay, remain, because you have this one meaning fixed or set. It's the same root here. So netur, divine, sacred. Bukale, sacred. Neteru, priest of Ra. Moaquidi, priest. From the root aquila, advocate for, defend, rule over, or to govern. Neter, power, divinity. Neter, terror. So it's neter, tri, divine, strong. And then you have bukole, strength, energy, express, which is another form in gulu, strength, physical power. And so you should know that the G form is voiced as a result of the nasal voicing here. So this is why you get ngulu, strength, power, physical, versus bukole, strength, energy, express here. And so we continue with the, neteri, natron soda, trona, which is a salt, and then you have mukele, salt. And so again, the roots ch to K, and then R to L in Egyptian versus Chiluba. And so notice again, when the N is attached to the K, it makes it a voice sound, so it turns to G. So Ingala, salt. So we have Neturu, sacred rod, pole, staff. Then you have Mukwasa, stick, baton, staff, pole. And so remember what I said. R comes from S, T, D, and sometimes L. And so Neteri, pure, purified. You have Keza, purified, make clean. Kinza, purify. Neteru, a kind of cloth. Chikusu kusu, cloth, rag. So all of these are regular. You cannot argue that these are not related. We've proven this beyond a shadow of a doubt. Same meanings, consistent, regular correspondences. So now this becomes important. So now we're going to tie it all together. So this is where all the RBGs and everybody and their mama are going to get mad because they want to separate themselves from white people. So now we're doing a comparison between Proto-Indo-European, Ancient Egyptian, Chiluba, and Collagen. So now you have 4 languages we're comparing, and you'll find each one of these words in all 4 languages consistently with the same sound meaning correspondences. So we have this form in Proto-Indo-European. Kiahu, Giahu, swell, become strong. And then in Cikam, Net'er, power, divinity. Neteri, divine, strong. Netir, fixed, set, solid, firm, hard, which corresponds to Kale in Chiluba. Strong, well, vigorous, arduous, firm, steady, stable, solid, hard, immovable, fixed, steady, fast, powerful, robust, tough as meat. Bukole, strength, energy, express. And then collagen, you have kat, strong, serious, bitter. Inkorionit, I needed to highlight that. I missed that. Strength, power. Quil, hardy. Quilak, muscular, powerful, well-built. Same consistency. This word here, Gahut, Lord, God, honor, glory, masterful, glorious, honorable. Neter, divinity, God. Inkole and Quele, God. Netor, one who is tall and massive, exalted, the deity. We go down for the word for heart, Kiaher, Giaher, heart in Proto-Indo-European. In Egyptian, Neteri, heart of the gods of kings. In Chiluba, it's Muchima. And this is cognate, and we can prove this in other instances. But this chi is a palatalization. It'll be the same here when you say netcher. So that's both the same, chi. But Egyptian R also corresponds to Chiluba M. And Chiluba, L and R also corresponds to Egyptian M. But that's another conversation. But believe me, this is a cognate. In collagen, kuoi, the word for liver. Now, the word liver in our modern times is a different organ and everything from the heart. However, the same word for liver, heart, and stomach, and even lungs is the same in African languages. And so we've had this discussion many, many times before, but these are cognates. This form here, ku, to see, kahu, gahu, to see, neteret, divine eye, sacred eyes. No cognate in Chiluba, but in collagen, to see, to look at, view. Ket, high, get high. Then we have in Egyptian, kheri, so it's non-palatalized, but it's rounded. So there's a u sound after this. It's a rounded k sound. So you should know that this ch comes from k. And we discussed this many, many times before, but I discuss it again in the text with examples. So tall, high, long, exalted, be raised. And then we have ta'ur, tall, elevated, steep. And so more examples here to show that this is not a fluke. We have Gahir, waters, the Netari, canal of the god, and Chiluba in Coco, stream, and then collagen, Ka'ir, stream with clean water, fresh, clear river. All the same word. Chiluba lost the second syllable and just repeated the first one. And so we had this Proto-Indo-European cur, to bind, and we have in Cikam, hakur, ship's cordage, tow rope. This is the agent prefix, which changes this root here, which is a verb, into a noun. And so you have in Chiluba, kanda, bind, remember. Then a palatalized form, chinga, bind, attach, and suika, bind, attach. But collagen, quar, tie, bind, fasten, etc. And so we had these different forms built off of this root here, bind and kurtol, a container made of wood or wicker. Then netari, beer jug, collagen, tear, pot. Kurti, name of a garment. In Egyptian, Cikam, netari, a kind of cloth. Netari, a magic cord. In Chikusu kusu, cloth rag. And then sirit, clothes, cloth, siruk. So this is why it's important that I went through all those other forms first, because if I would have just came here and then showed you sirit and saruk, you would swear that this is not the same. But you know that this is a cognate that goes with these forms here in Proto-Indo-European because we did those comparisons before. And so al, snake in the Proto-Indo-European, which is cur, a male snake. And then you have the palatalized form, which is cheref, and a snake. And the F is a suffix for animals, or dangerous animals to be exact. In Chiluba, jikala, snake. And in collagen, intarit, snake, python. And then lastly, kahin, or gahin, burn, glow, shine. And then seneture, scent, fumigation, smoking, incense. And then Chiluba, tala, to burn, mutala, inflammation. Then the palatalized form, Sheila, be calcined, be consumed, be worn, and Shidisha, burn, destroyed by fire, etc. So the sense is on the burn. And so that's why, this word for incense comes from a root meaning to burn. And then we have quinyi, light, illuminate, shine, etc. So, saying all that to say again, that the cognate for the word for God in Proto-Indo-European is Egyptian neter, Chiluba in Kole, in Quele, in collagen net-to-or. This is proven. And again, there's more examples given, and I have to I put this in here because we had to where the O in God and stuff come from. The word in Kole or in Quele in Chiluba gives us the root for all of these forms here. And so in Quele or in Quela is the original form which morphed into Inkole. And so how this happens is there's a root ila, which means to exit from the self, any thought, idea, or object in things. And it also means a root meaning to throw or to do. So you have this prefix kuela, which becomes quela. And there's a rule in chi and into where when the u sound comes before e, it often turns into the u turns into w, and then this forms here turn into o. So that's how you have both the forms quele and cole. And so you see another form here, another word that goes through the same process. So we have the mu prefix for a root ineka, or ine with a ka suffix. And so the u becomes w in front of e or e, and so it becomes muneka, and then it becomes moneka, to be visible, perceptible, etc. So you see this form, and so here are the forms that you see here. So Incole, ingole, eminent or powerful man or God. In collagen, there's another form, inculo, which is God. But I think this may be a borrowing into the collagen because their native is net to or. And so in Proto-Bantu, you have the form code to be strong. And this is where you get the word God from in these other languages. And so you see this form here in Chiluba, Natalal, male bird. In collagen is Kerit, type of hawk. In Proto-Bantu, Kodi, hawk. That same word, Kodi, hawk, it comes from this word, this root here, Kod, to become strong, mighty, powerful. That's what this in Kode, eminent or powerful man, God. So when you're saying the word God, all you're talking about is a power, a creative power, a power that can do things, to make things happen. And so this word Heru, and matter of fact, and this word is also netter. And so this sign here has two forms, netter and Heru or her. And so both forms come from this, the Proto-Bantu. And see, we this other form here, Mukulu, chief director, president, head. In Kela, erudite, learned man, educated, civilized, and noble. And so this is what you see, and I put white God at the bottom here for Proto-Indo-European. Kahut, Gahut, Lord, God, honor, glory, masterful, glorious, and honorable. And so this is the evolution and the explanation for the word God. It comes from the African code or God. And so there's something else that we have to understand. So how does, because we got to pay attention to the form here. God, Lord, God, honor and glory, and then masterful, glorious, and honorable. So how does this, these forms derive from a root that means to become strong, right? And strong and powerful, and the word power coming from a root meaning to do, to act. And so as Ioana Pesalo on the semantic matrix from his 2013 PhD dissertation, he says this, which is very important here. He says the alternation of meanings of a semantic field is governed, for instance, by the following regular factors. The grammatical categories of the stems belong to a root matrix. For instance, it is commonplace within Proto-Indo-European roots that a verb meaning to go with four legs, run, is associated with substantives or nouns meaning horse, bird, and or foot, leg, an adjective meaning hasty, a numeral meaning for, and prepositions meaning forward, forth, etc., and an adverb meaning fast. The subcategories of the stems, such as transitivity, gender, etc., govern regular changes of meaning, which can be digitally managed. So what he's saying is that from a verb meaning to go, you get all these other meanings, meaning horse, bird, foot, leg. And I argue that's actually the other way around. It's from the noun foot, leg that you get to go or to run, because that's the action of the foot. But that's my disagreement with him. But what is shown here is the relationship between to go, foot, leg, etc. So he continues talking about the semantic matrix. So when we're talking about a semantic matrix, we're talking about the variety of meanings for a root in a language. So we continue, and I have it bolded here. The facts of the external reality are reflected in the dimensions of a systematic field. Thus, in Proto-Indo-European, a verb meaning to make. So remember what I said about ila. Ila means to do, to make, to exit from the self, to create in things. And so from that root, you had the ku prefix, meaning to do, and then that was nominalized to a word meaning strength and power, because power and strength has to deal with to do, to be able to do something. So the more strength you have, the more you can do. And so thus, in Proto-European, a verb meaning to make is often accompanied by a substantive noun meaning hand, or more abstractly, work, an adjective meaning capable and might. And so we're going to now go and check the semantics. So in Proto-Indo-European, this word do or do means to worship, venerate, and also mighty. And so I'm saying this, let me go back here. So we have Lord for God, Lord, God, honor, glory, and then masterful, glorious, honorable. So to honor, to give glory to something, also has to deal with power and strength. And so that's why when you see in this Proto-Indo-European word, a totally separate word, to worship, to venerate, in other words, to glorify, to give honor, it's also the same word meaning mighty. And so we see the same semantics in Middle Egyptian. So we have this word here, warish, to be pleased, be glad, be distinguished, be honored, be strong, honor, due to a king or to a god or king, prestige. And so we have another word here, berra. Some will say bout, but this is a consonant, which is an R sound. Glory, respect, authority, power, strength, faith. Barawi, power, might, strength, will, glory, powers, fame, wrath. And so you're seeing a semantic correlation between strength, power, veneration, honor, glory, etc. And so when you're talking about the word for God in Proto-Indo-European, is one that is powerful, but one worthy of honor and glory. Is no different than the forms you see in these African languages. And so the takeaway from this, and I'm ending here, is that human societies are more closely aligned than what the surface speculations appear to indicate. So while everybody is trying to separate themselves from Indo-European speakers and Semitic speakers and stuff to this nature, a deep scientific analysis shows that one is more related than one thinks. And so in science, my second point here, we never assume the value of something a priori. In other words, unless an idea or a concept has been proven to exist, it doesn't exist. So this is why I challenged all them folks who had an issue with my claim that the word God has an African origin. They would dismiss it offhand without doing any work. And so, because I come from a scientific background, we don't believe nothing you say. Demonstration beats conversation. And until you demonstrate it and prove it through scientific means, your argument doesn't exist. You have a hypothesis. So my third point is, if given the opportunity and assets, do your own work, especially in situations where scholars fail to show their own work and methodology. So if I wasn't a scientist, if I didn't have a science background, all I would do is go into the books and say, well, Mallory and Adams and Wikipedia and Renge and all of these people say that God either means to pour libations, to call, or to sacrifice. But because I'm not a yes man, I don't appeal to authority. I like to do my own experiments. And when you are competent enough in a field to be able to do your own experiments, you can challenge any orthodoxy. So as I demonstrated at the beginning, these folks have no idea what the word God means for the most part in these earlier renditions. That's why they have so many etymologies. But once we do the scientific process of analysis here, called the comparative method, it becomes clear what it means. And so this is mathematics. This isn't guessing. And so everybody's just going to have to be in their feelings. And so, you know, Bukanda for life and the black woman is God. I had to end it with that just because. But if anybody has any questions, this is the time to ask your questions. Anybody got any opposition? If they feel that they can falsify my data, I challenge you to do so now. Well, you probably ain't gonna be able to do it now, but I challenge you now. So let's make this happen. And so I'll wait a second, you know. And so for Shesmu, this is what I've been drinking. So V8 juice, and so no wine because I don't do alcohol. So while I sip, y'all contemplate what just went down, if you understood what just went down. And if y'all got opposition or just any general questions, this is your time to ask. If you need me to go back and, you know, to a particular point, you know, to address something, I can do that as well. So he said, they said they're going to put it in writing. That's fine. That's what I encourage. So, you know, I don't take people's YouTube arguments too seriously. You need to put it in writing. That's a funny comment. I'm gonna share it. But I'm not seeing any questions. Anybody on Facebook that's listening, you got any questions or comments? He says we see that Patron in that juice. No Patron, no Patron. So I don't smoke, and I've never smoked, and I've never drunken alcohol. Now I have a sugar addiction, so that's my crack. I've done sugar crack in the form of Snicker bars, Twix, all that other good stuff, but I don't smoke or drink and never have. He says, I greet all in peace. Like the background. Yeah, so I got this cosmic background, you know, for today's conversation, because when you get into the nature of God in African cultures and languages, you know, they equate it to existence in the cosmos itself. So I figured that this Cosmo background, if y'all can see it, is, this, we in outer space. See some asteroids and all that other kind of stuff, but it's appropriate for the conversation. So, so nobody has any. 42 Tribes says it's ironic that the video game. Let me post your comment. He says, ironic that the video game that has Proto-Indo-European has hella black people in it. What video game are you talking about? 42 Tribes. I ain't played video games in a hot minute. He said, I baited the switches. Where's Morgan Freeman? No, I'm not defending that Morgan Freeman is God, but I am saying at least that, him being an African man in the United States is closer to God than the God concept than the first image that I showed. He says Far Cry Primal is the game. I assume that's the title of the game that we asked him for, earlier. And let me see if I can do something real quick, because I want to, since no one has any questions for me, I am going to share my screen and advertise for tomorrow's conversation. Hold on, we have Mahari Mengistu. Hold on. Let me see if I can read. He said, it makes perfect sense since the African is the firstborn with thousands of years of world travel and civilization, and apparently there's a mother African language. Of course. Bunch of black Neolithic Europeans, maybe 30% would have passed the color line. Yep. And so where is the connection in the mythopoetic sense? Or does that not qualify in terms of this presentation because it's linguistic based? Yeah, so we're just in this conversation, I'm just talking about the linguistic origins. And so, different cultures can ultimately see God in various different ways, and their mythology will express itself differently in different cultures. But what I'm addressing here is this notion that you can't use the word God to refer to the quote unquote divine principles or the creative energy, that the Africans reference, because the word God itself is simply a dialectical variant of the word nature or Nkole or Ngole in African languages. They're the same word and they reference the same fundamental concept. So whether you're saying God in English or Gott in German, etc., or whether you're saying in Toro, in Akan, or whether you're saying Toro in Zande and Sango, or in Kole, in Kwele, in Chiluba, or in Kolo, in collagen, or Neto or Netcher, or Ka or Ker in Egyptian. They're all the same word and they all reference the same fundamental phenomenon. And so this idea that, you can't use Indo-European words to reference or to refer to African concepts is just a bunch of nonsense. And because many of the Indo-European words are African words themselves. And so people want to talk about how Africans are the origins of Homo sapiens sapiens, and that out of Africa they spread and populated the rest of the earth. But at the same time, they want to act as if Indo-Europeans sprang out of nowhere, out of the ether, and aren't related to black people. And so, we're looking at phenotype as if that is the formation of some new type of race, when the light skin phenotype is only like 6,000 years. And so, these Africans have been traveling and interacting and becoming other people for hundreds of thousands of years. And even more recently, there's been these interactions. And so we can detect African concepts and words in Indo-European languages. And so there's no escaping it. And so this is the difference between those of us who are scientists, who are about the information, the validity of the information first, versus those who have political agendas. And so I can give a rat's ass about the politics. What I'm concerned of is what is the actual and factual history. And that's what we need to be concerned with. Hold on. And people don't know, like 42 tribes is speaking about, like there's lots of data about dark-skinned Black African people, amongst Indo-Europeans, and is not dealing with slavery and anything to that nature. And so let me post that comment. And so to understand this information, it says, I'm not Christian, well, they having their own conversation. Oh man, I'm trying to go up and see. Load says that Lord Cesar Hambanel, I know I'm pronouncing that all kinds of wrong. He says that I have a question. And so I don't see your question, but I'm acknowledging that you have a question. So if you have your question, please let me know in the chat and I will attempt to answer your question. But in the meantime, I'm going to share my screen and to advertise the conversation which I am having tomorrow. So join me tomorrow in 17 hours from now as I interview Brother Amru Ahmed. And he is a good brother out of the Sudan. And so the conversation tomorrow is going to be at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And so if those of you are listening from the Sudan, it's going to be 11 p.m. your time. So join us tomorrow for this interview with this good brother. And he's a Sudanese brother who teaches Meta Nature to Sudanese people and trying to reconnect them to their African roots and heritage, because the indigenous group that he belongs to, they totally lost their language. They only speak Arabic now. And so he's trying to get them back into their language and culture because Islam, took over the culture. And so we're going to have a conversation about, his approach to the study of Meta Nature, what he's learned, how he's using that to re-Africanize his brothers and sisters in the Sudan. And so I think he's in North Sudan, because Sudan is split down to North and South Sudan. So join us tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern time for the interview with our good brother Amru Ahmed out of the Sudan. So let me go back to my screen and stop the sharing and see if our brother has nope, he has not. Hold on, let me see. So at least let me see. There is a question from the Facebook chat from our good brother Alan Flagg. And I don't know, my screen went blank. Maybe my laptop is not plugged in. He asked, so is there and African origin for the word devil to, I have no idea. I haven't looked into that. And that would be a good research question. But I think the word devil itself, so let's just do a preliminary looking into. So we can go to, let me share my screen again. We can go to the new tab, and we can go to the etymonline.com. So this is usually my first stop when I'm looking at the etymology of, different words. And so this is the online etymological dictionary. And so it's good. They're constantly updating and adding new entries into their dictionary. So let's look up the word devil and see what they say. So this is just a preliminary look. And so devil, Old English, diaphol, a devil, a subordinate, evil spirit afflicting humans. Also in Christian theology, the devil, a powerful spirit of evil, otherwise known as Satan. It's a Latin word from late Latin, diabolos, also the source of Italian, diavolo, French, diable, diable or diable, Spanish, would you say diablo, German, Teufel, and is Old High German, Teofal, from Latin via Gothic, diabolus. The late word is from the ecclesiastical Greek, diabolos, which in Jewish and Christian use was the devil, Satan, and which in general use meant accuser, slanderer. Thus, it was a scriptural loan translation of Hebrew Satan. It is an agent noun from Greek diabolian, to slander, to attack, literally to throw across, from dia, across, through. And so diabolin, to throw, from Proto-Indo-European root guele, to throw. And this is interesting, this root here. So see this Proto-Indo-European root guele, to throw, to reach. This is exactly the word that this is also an African word. Guele, to throw, to reach. And this is from the same root that you get the word God from. Because as I said, this root here, ella, it means to exit from the self, also to create. But when you put ku in front of it, it means to throw, to reach, but also to do, to make something. And it's from that, when you put the agent prefix in on it, that it becomes power, or one who is powerful, one who is imminent. In other words, one who can make something happen, one who acts, the agent who acts. So, but I would have to look into this root here, dia, to see if I would have to do the same process that I did with the collagen that we saw all throughout the conversation. So no, I don't know if the devil is an actual word, but I doubt that the word devil in its full form is of African origin, but I would look into the root, which means dia, meaning to come across or through, that I would look for that. But I know this aspect of the word guele, so that I know for a fact we just went over this root here, guele. And so that aspect of the word where we get the veal from is African. But I have not done any analysis on this root here, dia. So I'll table that for now, and we'll come into the future on that question. So okay, let me go here. Is it wrong for a person to have a bias against using the term God in place of nature? Excuse my blackety arrogance, but what if I don't want to associate with Proto-Indo-European with African classical culture? That's fine. That's your opinion. What you can't argue from this point on is that the word God is not it is not African, and that it does not capture the fundamental essence of, for example, a word nature. That's your preference, but you're not doing. It's like saying, I don't even know, because you're not really doing anything when you do that, because the word nature, as I just proven, and the word God are the exact same word. They're just dialectical variants. So you're only substituting for political purposes, and that's fine. But if you try to extend or go beyond that and then try to rationalize it to make it seem as well God doesn't capture the same essence as the word nature, that would be erroneous, because they're the exact same word and they mean the exact same thing and they refer to the exact same concept. And so, in other words, you can substitute if you're having a conversation with somebody and somebody defines nature as God, they are right and exact. So that's what I would say to that. And so we have to be careful here. So he says, even in knowing they took the meaning directly from us. It's not that they took the meaning. And this is something that is kind of hard for us to explain. They inherited the meaning, because you had Africans going into these areas and then having children and intermarrying and becoming these people. So they didn't take anything. It's just like when people try to say that the Greeks took ancient Egyptian knowledge. They didn't take anything. They were initiated. They had to pay fees to go to school in Africa. They were taught. And so they bring that back home so they can use it. And then their coaches inherited that knowledge in those terms and things of that nature. So we have to be careful how we word these things. And so I'm waiting for, let me see. He has not come back. I don't know if he left, but if you are listening, again, he said he had a question, and I forgot what his name was, Lord something, and not Lord of Mercy. But it was an African brother, he had an African name, but I don't know where he went. There you go. He just says, I have a question. So if Lord is still listening and you have a question, please hit me up and ask your question. So so hold on. Oh, there we go. He says, no, I understand that their Proto-Indo-European does exist. I'm not trying to be fallacious. I just don't care to. So that's fine. That's a political thing. That's a political statement. So I understand the politics behind not wanting to associate with Indo-European things. What I'm saying is that as a scientist, I can't let my politics get in the way of trying to get to the truth of a thing. So with me ignoring the politics, I have a scientific research question. What is the etymology of the word God in the English language? And does that etymology have an ultimate African origin? That's the research question. And so from there, I go into my research question. So if I already believe, if I have a bias that the Indo-Europeans are totally separate, that they have nothing to do with African people, or I don't want to have anything to do with Proto-Indo-European people or just Indo-European speakers in general, then I would never get to answer my question. And so it is unscientific for me to approach a research question with a bias that already determine what the outcome is going to be already. So that's the problem with all of the people who tried to argue with me in these early days concerning the word God. They already had a preconceived notion of what it meant and where it came from, but they didn't do any work on the subject whatsoever. And so I'm having a scientific discussion with non-scientists, and I'm trying to level them up to do scientific work. And so it's led to many arguments and disagreements. Let me go. Let's see. So Alan Flagg comes back. He says, so the committee worship many gods. What a can of worms. Yeah, they worship many gods. I mean, I don't see why that's a problem, but they only believed in one God in terms of it being existence itself. And so I've already done a YouTube video, at least on this, and then of course a more elaborate conversation in the Luja Volume 2 on the nature of God in these African languages and cultures. So for the consensus, the dominant worldview on the continent of Africa concerning what we call God, the single creative force, is that God is existence itself, and that everything is just a manifestation of God, the infinite being. And so because it is existence, it is the cosmos, they honor different aspects of this infinite being that they will worship and venerate and try to understand, in particular different schools, etc. And so, the problem is that, we try to look at and try to make arguments from a standpoint of Europeans who fully don't understand African realities. And we even try to argue against their realities using their logic. And that's the problem that we have. And so I try to bring us back into African logic and worldview, and then make the argument from that standpoint. But there's certain aspects of the argument and the dialogue that can only be happened from a scientific perspective, that it isn't an African worldview or a European worldview. It is what it is. It's the science of it all. And so we got to know when to bring these things into the conversation and into perspective. And so let me see. So it doesn't look like there's any more questions and things. And so it looks like we lost Lord or Lord. I don't know how you pronounce the name, but I do appreciate every last one of you for joining the conversation, and thank those who have donated, and those who are watching in terms of the archive. I would encourage you all to review this video. I see Flim Flam has a question, so you can ask your question and I'll just wait. So those of you who are catching the archive, I appreciate you all. Join us again tomorrow at 5 p.m. as we interview our brother out in the Sudan, 5 p.m. Eastern time, on Saturday, May 9th, for this conversation that we are having. Hold on. Somebody is asking or commenting over on my other page. So let me see. He says, the maximum, this is 42 tribes. The maxims of Ptahhotep says, I raised corn and I love Snopi. Some say Nopi was the god of corn. What would priest of the god of corn do? I don't know. Flim Fam asked where they got Gomer Osduber from. Gomer Osduber. That sounds Germanic. I don't know what that means. I'm not top notch on my German, and I'm starting my German studies so I can delve deeper into some of these Egyptian studies. So Gomer as Duber. Gomer as Duber. Nope, doesn't seem like it's German. Let's see, Lithuanian. Nope, don't know what that is. So I guess that's supposed to be an acronym for God or something to that nature. So Gomer as Duber from. I don't know who that is or where they get that from. So I'm assuming that that's supposed to be an acronym where someone assumed that you get God from, but that I have no idea. He says, I was told that's where they get God from. Yeah. Again, if it's Germanic, that at least if it's German, it's not pulling up in my thing. It's not even registering as a German word. So I don't know what language that's supposed to be, but so yeah, I don't know where that comes from. So let me see. It says it is German. Yeah, it didn't come up, and unless it was spelled wrong, that's not what comes up, under at least in terms of Google Translate. Let me. It might be in some other reference, but I could not find that in under Google Translate. So let me see. Nope, still no questions. So again, since there's no questions, I'm not going to hold y'all up anymore. It's already been 2.5 hours, so I was hoping to keep it just around 2 hours, so I'm over time. But Magic Commander says Gomer as the bar. Yeah, I saw it like gave me the bar, but Gomer is not giving me Gomer as the bar. So it's saying like Lithuanian, and so the bar meaning now in Lithuanian, but Gomer as means nothing in Lithuanian. And then when I put it in German, it just gives me the same phrase. So it's whoever told y'all that just made that up. That's all I could say at this point. Somebody made that up. But he said, Asar, did you once mention a Nigerian Babalawo that explained the Bible from an African view? You once mentioned a giant. As far as this conversation, no, I don't know any Nigerian Babalawos that explain the Bible from an African view. You may be talking about a Nigerian linguist who's also a theologian and reverend, Dr. Modupe Oduyoye. Now, he explains a lot of the Bible and concepts from an African language perspective. So that's probably who you mean, but I haven't had any mention of Oduyoye in this conversation. And so, because I'm not dealing with the Yoruba language. So I'm only dealing with Proto-Indo-European, Collagen, Chiluba, and Middle Egyptian. So those are the languages that I dealt with today. No Yoruba language. Okay, so if y'all have any questions, hit me up on Facebook. Hit me up on my website at asarimhotep.com. Purchase, get you Aluja Volume 2 if you haven't gotten it already. And do I have, I don't even know what I did with my other book, but towards a comparative dictionary, it's around here somewhere. I have books everywhere. So anyway, you know where to get it. Go to asarimhotep.com, get get Illusion Volume 2. And if you want to have the details of what I went over today, that's in Towards a Comparative Dictionary text. So both are, you can get them on my website at asarimhotep.com. I thank you all for listening. I look forward to your feedback, your criticisms, and comments. And share, like, and if you haven't subscribed to my page, subscribe. And I'll see y'all tomorrow at 5 p.m. And so we're going to extend this conversation about Egyptian meta-nature, and we're going live to the continent in the Sudan, in the Nile Valley, to have this conversation. So y'all have a good night. And also, Erykah Badu and Jill Scott having a versus battle tomorrow on Instagram. I will be there right after our conversation. So I think it starts at 7 p.m. Eastern time on tomorrow. So peace. Y'all have a good night and love. All right.